Welcome to the Love Your Life and Yourself podcast, the weekly show where science meets soul and mom chaos meets mind mastery. You're not just a mom. You're a woman with dreams, a career, a body that needs care, and a soul that craves more. This podcast is your permission slip to stop surviving and start thriving in motherhood, health, career, and stress resilience. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Rath, and every week we bring you actionable insights and transformative conversations to help you create a life you truly love. From evidence-based wellness strategies to authentic self-discovery, we'll explore what it takes to thrive through expert interviews and real unfiltered stories. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3, Cortisol, Chaos, and the HPA axis, how stress hijacks your body, brain, and life. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Rath. I'm excited to be here with you today. And I wanted to start out with a question. I wanted to ask you, ladies specifically, although men, this probably may apply to you as well. Let me ask you this. Are you constantly exhausted, unable to sleep, gaining stubborn belly fat despite your efforts, and you have brain fog, memory loss, you are irritable for really no reason, probably have lower libido, or your periods are a bit wonky? Any of you? Yep. Yeah, right? Been there, done that. Your stress hormones may be completely out of whack and actually may be the hidden culprit. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk to you all about the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and how this command center essentially has an effect on all the other hormones. And it could be the reason that you are feeling the way you are. In our office, we see a lot of women with hormone challenges that come to us to help balance and regulate them. And the biggest thing that I hear is, my labs are normal, but I don't feel normal. I've done this, or I don't want to take the birth control that my doctor's telling me. But they go to their doctor, their primary medical doctor, and what happens is the doctor's like, okay, yes, like here are your labs are normal. You'll just have to kind of get through this perimenopause, menopause phase of your life, or just kind of deal with it. I don't really have any other recommendations. Or we could give you birth control or maybe some hormone replacement therapy. Again, there's a time and a place for all of these things. However, you realize there's a reason why I feel crappy. There's a reason why I constantly have no energy at all. I'm snapping at my kids and my spouse or partner. I am not remembering things that I used to remember. I have weight gain around the waist and my upper thighs, but I haven't changed the way I'm eating or exercising. And I just feel crummy. I know something's off. And in that gut feeling, you know something's off, but yet what you've tried isn't working, or what the doctors have tried isn't working. And so if you answered yes to any of these, this is your episode. I am so excited. I get super jacked up about all of this stress and how it can affect our mood, our mental emotional regulation, our stress, and essentially our overall function and vitality of health, right? That's what we want. We want to feel vital. We want to have energy. We want to be happy and joyful. But if we feel like garbage, probably not going to happen. And there's this very interesting study that came out. It had a lot of people in it. It had over 8,000 people, just under 9,000 people from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. And the study was done from 2009 to 2016. And what they wanted to see is what proportion of adults met the recommended targets for cardiovascular risk factors without any medications. And what they found is that only 12.2% of the American adults are metabolically healthy, meaning they have optimal levels of the 5 things they measured: blood glucose, triglycerides, HDL cholesterol, blood pressure, and waist circumference. This is absolutely alarming. This statistic shows us that nearly 88% of Americans have some sort of metabolic dysregulation. And we have to go back to the culprit. We have to go back to our chronic stress that our society has on us, but yet tells us, like, just live with it. It's just kind of the new norm, right? And I would disagree. This is something that we need to dive into and understand from a neurological level of why the heck our society and our population is so damn sick, right? 88% of the population, like, that's a huge number. That's a huge number. So how I want to start is I want you to understand what the HPA axis is and why it is so important for us to understand it. So the HPA axis stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And when we have a stress response, what happens is your hypothalamus sends a signal down to your pituitary gland sends a signal down to your adrenals, and your adrenals pump out cortisol, adrenaline, and all the stress hormones. This system is not bad. This is really, really healthy. This is a healthy short-term stress response, and it is absolutely not problematic when it is shortly lived. However, when we have this chronic activation of the HPA axis, that's essentially where all of these health challenges start to come out and present themselves. And so what happens is when we first have this chronic stress, is your adrenals are pumping out all the cortisol, right? Like this isn't bad in an acute stage. Let's say that you almost ran into a deer while you were driving on your way to work. You're going to get this response, right? Your heart rate's going to go up. You're just like that sympathetic, that fight or flight response. You're going to trigger that stress response. Or let's say in a healthy way, like you're exercising. Exercising is going to stimulate your stress response. However, once that stressor leaves or is not a threat to your body anymore, well, we want that system to be able to shut off. However, the majority of the population doesn't do that. This is where we start to see high cortisol levels. So there's actually different stages of what we see cortisol as. Most people think that they have high cortisol. And high cortisol, there's some overlap of symptoms, but high cortisol, you'll start to, essentially long-term high cortisol, you'll start to gain weight, especially around the abdomen. You might have irritability, insomnia, weight gain, nervousness, shakiness, elevated heart rate, blood sugar, blood pressure, instability, etc. But what happens is in this early stage of chronic stress, like it's still chronic, so it's kind of long-term, but in the early phases of chronic stress, your cortisol is going to be higher. Now, what happens in long-term chronic stress is actually we get the opposite. So most people think they have high cortisol. But in our office, what I am seeing after we do labs with our patients is we're seeing actually low cortisol. We're seeing persistent fatigue. They feel wired, but they're always tired. They have sugar, salt cravings. They have low libido, memory issues. And this low cortisol is like the exhausted, like burnt out, adrenals are thrown in the towel and like, I'm done, right? And in that phase, that's a lot of times where I start to see my patients. They're in a complete depleted, chronically stressed state. And now, because their cortisol has been dysregulated for so long, it's starting, or it has already, directly affect all of the other hormones downstream. It's starting to affect your insulin. And this will happen right away. It's just more prominent the further down you get into the chronic stress state. It's going to directly affect your insulin secretion and how you metabolize glucose. it's going to start to affect your progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. And that's where a lot of doctors look. They look at your estrogen, they look at your progesterone, or sometimes they even look at your cortisol. But are they measuring your cortisol multiple times in a day? Because your cortisol should be high in the morning and it should kind of ski slope down for the rest of the day. And then as you enter into the nighttime, it should be low so you fall asleep. And what we're seeing with this chronic low level is like you're flatline. You have zero energy, 100% exhausted. It doesn't matter how much sleep you get, you're always tired because your system is so overwhelmed and been on high alert for so long. Again, it's just throwing in the towel and like, I don't really want to do this. So when we see that HPA axis being chronically stressed out, now we're running into issues of estrogen and progesterone and low testosterone and imbalances within the hormones. And many times we'll see hormone replacement therapy. And I'm by no means bashing hormone replacement therapy. I think there is an absolute time and a place for it. My challenge before we do HRT, though, is what does your stress response look like? Right? Because if we start giving progesterone or estrogen or even testosterone and your stress response is so freaking wired or so out of rhythm, what happens is you're just treating a symptom again. You're not actually going upstream and treating the main problem of this stress response dysregulation that we're seeing within the HPA axis. There's so much research around stress and how it can affect. There's this one study, it is published in the Nature Scientific Reports back in 2020. And it studied two different categories. There were 72 participants, 36 were obese, and the other 36 were healthy weights. And what it showed is people with obesity who had high cortisol consumed significantly more food following stress than low cortisol reactors. And this was not observed in the normal weight participants. So what this demonstrates is there's literally a direct link between a stress response and eating behavior. Because what we're seeing when we're stressed out is we're going to more emotionally eat, and that's going to affect our obesity. And then also, when we're in a stress state, our insulin and glucose and how that's regulated is directly affected by cortisol. So if that's directly affected, now that's going to affect our metabolic function and our cravings and the spikes and valleys of glucose instead of this nice rolling hills of low glucose, higher insulin, let's reduce that. And this valley that we should be getting with our glucose and insulin, now we have super high spikes. And what happens over time, if we continue to do this, is we are seeing this insulin resistance. So people's bodies are getting less resistant or less, they're not even aware of the insulin within their body. So we call it insulin resistance. It's not responding to the insulin as it should. And that's where we start to see prediabetes and even type 2 diabetes further down the pattern. And my question is this stress response having that heavy of an effect on everything downstream? And when we start to regulate it, what happens to all those downstream? You know, this is some research that I'd love to dive into even more, but within our office, what we're seeing is as we start to balance that stress response and the HPA axis and regulating that pathway of how the cortisol is released, that's where true health and wellness really begins, right? We have to go upstream as far as we possibly can and get to the root cause before we start treating symptoms downstream. Now, absolutely, is there a time and a place to treat downstream with estrogen and progesterone and insulin and testosterone? Yes, absolutely. However, true health and wellness, you have to have your nervous system regulated. And if you are bouncing from sympathetic to parasympathetic and then not parasympathetic and hanging out in that stress response for so long, your body is going to start to take a toll. It's going to start to give you symptoms to say, hey, pay attention to me. There's something going on here, right? I am trying to tell you, hey, I'm over here, listen, right? So as we start to become aware of this stress response and what it's doing to our health downstream, now the real question is what do we do to balance it? What do we do to get our HPA axis in alignment and functioning the way it should? How do we reset the rhythm of that stress response? And of course, we can do it in, all of the basic ways, right? Our diet helps, the way we move, the way we exercise, how we sleep. And it sounds like too easy, right? Those are just all things that we know. But I'm telling you, doing the basic things are going to move the needle massively. Now, sometimes you think you're doing the right things, but they can actually be hindering more. So like super high intensity training, like CrossFit and things like that for women in perimenopause and menopause, that can actually have a hindering effect on that HPA axis and have it actually be a correlate. There's actually research showing that there's a correlation with the HPA dysfunction and how when we have that high intensity, our cortisol levels it doesn't work. They don't. So prioritizing more walking, weighted vest walking, yoga, strength training. So as we start to become more aware of those triggering effects, then we can start to change our HPA axis. So morning sunlight, sleep consistency, blue light management, not having, blue light or screens an hour before we go to bed, moderating our bedrooms. So I'm just throwing all these different tips and techniques out there, meditation, because they seem too easy to adapt, but yet they are going to move the needle massively. So my challenge to you is to look at your life and close your eyes and really just think about, well, don't close your eyes if you're driving or something, but look at your life and think about like what's going to move the needle the most, right? And pick one. We can't do all of the things all at once. Eventually, maybe we can get there, but we have to make small little changes within our life to be able to make those big changes overall. And then some of you are like, Ashley, I have tried it all. I have done it all. I have done the exercise. I eat really clean. I've taken the supplements. And that's where a lot of my patients actually come from. They're like, I am sick of it. Or they're like, I don't know where to start. There is so much information out there. There's so many different products. I know something's off. I want to get to the root cause of this and really, really get healthy because I'm sick of being sick. I'm sick and tired of being tired, right? I actually hear that quite frequently. And that's where they come to me. And if this is you, reach out to me. I'll put my functional health website in there where you can read a little bit more about our program. And I love to have myself or a team member sit down with you and do a mini consult with you. So if this is you and it hits home, I am throwing it out there that I am going to give you guys a free mini consult between myself or my team to be able to get your hormones under control in balance, because I believe this is so important to do because it's going to have an effect on everything downstream, right? The HPA axis plays such a critical role in your body's stress response, energy regulation, and metabolic health. And it's super important to understand that relationship between chronic stress and your physiological health. And what happens when you start to have dysfunction within that stress response, you're going to get symptoms like fatigue, weight gain, mood disorders, anxiety, depression, weight gain, memory fog, perimenopause, menopause symptoms. You get like the little weird eye twitches or cravings that are off the roots, or just that irritability. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? And that's a clear sign right there that your HPA axis, your stress response, is not probably functioning at 100%. So I recommend absolutely getting labs done. Let's figure out where the root cause is within this. And then that's how we start to support a healthy HPA function. So in closing, I hope you gain some knowledge of what the HPA axis is and how it affects our metabolic and physiological health overall, and why it's so important for us to essentially be aware of how we are handling stress and essentially be able to take simple steps like exercising, eating high protein, 30 to 40 grams of protein with every meal, and doing these simple things to make this big shift in our health, and how easy it can be, but how consistent we do have to become. So if this hit well with you, hit the follow button, hit the like button, share it with a friend who you know is maybe struggling in perimenopause or menopause, or has gone a little wonky off the walls. And you're like, this is what we're talking about. I'm not crazy. My doctor, like, there is something going on, because you're not. Like, if you don't feel good, don't let someone else tell you that everything, quote, is normal, because it's probably not. Listen to that gut feeling. Hit share, hit like. And again, I hope you continue to choose to love your life and yourself. Thanks for tuning in to Love Your Life and Yourself. I hope today's episode gave you one more tool or one more truth to help you thrive in your health, happiness, and resilience. Remember, loving yourself isn't selfish, it's leadership. And it's the foundation for building a life that actually feels like yours. If this spoke to you, hit that follow button, leave a review, and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. And if you want to dive even deeper, grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Love Your Life and Yourself. It's the heart behind this podcast, and it's helped thousands of women step into a life they actually love. You can find it at drashleyrath.com or through the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care of you and keep choosing to love your life and yourself.